That's it, we're recording now. So then, Rosie, thank you for joining our afternoon.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I think we've known each other now for, what, a couple of years? Getting on for a couple of years. We met at an event, and I didn't even see you at the event, did I?
No.
But I stood up and talked, and you contacted me.
Yes, I was very impressed, Karen. Very impressed.
So
I need to meet this woman that stands up and speaks so eloquently about her business and her passion to a group of strangers without any problem or any issue. And of course, because you live locally to me, it made sense.
Yeah, and all out the blue, I ended up with a telephone call off Rosie because she picked up one of my leaflets. So it just goes to show, leave your leaflets around because when you've spoken somewhere, because you never know when somebody might just pick them up. And, you know, Rosie's given me help, so's Nigel, so's Jay, and so's Silvana.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
That's
really?
it. I mean, Silvana and I met on the Coaching Wolves Pack last year, and we had a whale of a time.
On the what? The Coaching Horse Pack?
Coaching Wolves Pack.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we met. Ralph Watson's actually master trainer.
Yeah.
And as he's called, the Wolf is known as Coaching Wolves Pack. We were.
Yeah, that's it.
And I met Nigel many years ago at a coffee in Natta. Nigel told me off because he was talking to somebody. I just flung a leaflet at him.
Remember that well.
Naive, didn't know what I was doing.
Read this. We're like, yo, chill out, girl. I'll come to you next. Oh my God.
And we connected and we're working together. And Jay, I think the first time I met you was at Coffee and Natter, and my sister said, can Jay stop the weekends at your house because he's on a course? So that's
okay.
A random bloke can
So basically, if you're in if you got to go out drinking in Worcester or Bromsgrove, Karen's house is open all hours.
Yeah, open. Any vagrant.
Staggering at 4:30 in the morning.
I have to say, Karen and John's hospitality is unsurpassed.
I would imagine so, knowing Karen as I do.
Yeah, I can believe it.
So then, back to our question, Rosie, as she's my guest today.
You should have that mastermind countdown thing or whatever it is. Yeah.
So, what was your childhood like when you were growing up? Was it good or was it bad?
Good or bad? That's always an interesting one to answer when I think about my childhood. I don't think about it as being either good or bad, or if I was going to, I suppose I'd veer towards good. I remember it being happy. I remember being very content. When I think back, and you know, I've probably forgotten a lot more than I can ever remember, but when I think back to my childhood, I get kind of warmed feelings and, you know, and nostalgic feelings. And if we were poor, for instance, I don't know about that. I know now that in comparison to a lot of people, we didn't have as much as many, but I never felt that I lacked anything. So I think I would say it was happy rather than good, you know, but it was a happy childhood, yeah.
And did you have any siblings, or were you the only one?
Well, that's part of the whole thing, really. I've got 5 brothers, 5 fantastic brothers, and a sister. So I'm the oldest of 7. So we kind of made our own fun. We always had birthday parties. There were enough of us to do that between ourselves. My uncle lived immediately across the road with his family, which there was 6. So, you know, we kind of were in and out of the houses, and we were together all the time. So when I think about siblings, I think about my cousins as well, because it was just one big family. So all of that made for a happy childhood.
And did you find school easy?
Wow. I actually enjoyed school. I did. I went to a grammar school. So the first thing, yeah, exactly. And it was like that, Nigel. It was, certainly coming from, and we were the only black families in a quite, an area. And I'm the oldest. So to pass my 11 plus at that time was a really big thing. It was a community thing, and we were part of my dad's a Pentecostal bishop, so we were part of a big church community. So I can remember going on the stage at church, and everybody, Rosie got 11 plus, and she's
there was celebrating with you.
Oh, it was amazing.
Go on, girl, are you that child? Are you that? Well, I was there. Where was the church?
in Erdington.
Might have been, never know. Might have been in part
where
of the
we live.
I got dragged everywhere when I was younger.
But yeah, and so it was celebrated, and education was really celebrated. So I went to a grammar school, and I'm not. I enjoy learning. I love learning, and I've never stopped learning, and I'm always on a course doing something. I wasn't an easy student. I didn't find that easy. I had to study hard, and I found essay writing hard. But if somebody spoke to me, and I was interested, I could sit and work it all out. So in terms of, did I find school easy? I don't know if I found it easy, but I enjoyed it. I did, because I enjoy learning. So, there were some subjects that I couldn't abide, like physics. I just couldn't get my head around that. I didn't enjoy history. But I loved things like English and English literature and French and, anything like that. So, yeah, I found it relatively pleasant.
I hear you.
Yeah, in terms of learning, I think, yeah. I mean, there were other things that went on in the school. Again, I was the one of 2 black girls in the whole year, and that had its own issues from time to time. So, did I find that easy? No, but learning was easy for me. Yes, I enjoyed it.
Okay. And did you go to college or university, or start work straight away?
I went to both. I went to Sutton College. And that's because I started to do my A-levels at school in 6th form. It was horrendous. So I left and went to Sutton College, and then went to, I did two courses at 2 degrees. One at, I went to Trent University and the University of Central England. So yeah, I did both.
Okay. So what came first? Was it your being a leader, your speaking, or your advisor global transformation, your master coach, or chair of mental charities?
Chronologically, I guess what would have come first would be my advising. I became a careers advisor back in, rather not say what year.
I know you're only 27. Don't worry about that.
But my first official work role was as a careers advisor, careers and employment advisor, working with people, young people, 16 to 19, with special needs.
I've got a question. Was it pre-YTS or post-YTS?
It was during YTS, and whilst I was there, YTS came to an end. I don't know whether any of you remember, they had training credits. So the whole idea was for, especially when you're dealing with people with special needs, was to try to get them onto these training courses, because we had these training vouchers that you got money for, that the government or the system, you know, local government got money for. And it was an awful situation, you know, because people with special needs, or young people with special needs, had a few more needs than, you know, going into employment or training.
Absolutely. And I suppose when you right now look at how the world has changed, how people with special needs are more accommodated for, there's funding available specifically, they've developed learning to help them get into employment based on how they learn rather than trying to fit them into a box. Sorry, Karen. Would you say that things have moved on tenfold since when you were kind of doing that role?
I don't know if I'd say tenfold.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I'd say tenfold, but in some areas it has, you know, because yes, depending on what the needs are, I guess, you know, it's easy if you have a disability that is evident. So I remember dealing with working with an agency, a training agency, and an employer, a really big engineering company, to take on somebody with a hearing loss. And that's quite simple because, you know, their only thing was the risk assessment, was that we needed to make sure that when the alarms went off, they got a flashing light. Yeah. That was easy. Somebody with what was known as a moderate learning difficulty, it's something else, isn't it? Because especially now, you know, technology is such that you have to understand how to use, and you know that technology is only as good as the information that you put in it. And so, you know, somebody with a moderate learning difficulty, from dyslexia to autism, for instance, on you know, the functioning end, could still be prejudiced in the workplace. So, you know, I'm not in the system anymore, so, you know, but my role was a real advocacy role then. So I guess, the question of which came first, it was the advisor. Leader, as a leader, you know, I'm the oldest of 7.
You've always been a leader. You were born a leader. You were. I was going to ask you about that, because obviously being the eldest, that means that you had all the power in the house. When, because I don't know if you ladies know, and Jay, but the Caribbean community, it was quite sexist, and the girls were expected to get involved in everything to do with keeping the house spick and span and cooking, whereas boys were generally left to kind of just do what boys do. But I imagine that Rosie would have been, no sir, can't work like that. You get the hoover, you do the washing, you.
Well, I think it's the same in fairness, when I did sociology, you realise that there are similarities with working class families, in terms of the roles then. And yes, it was pretty much like that, you know. Still, my brothers will tell you something different. I like to think that I was fair. I don't
hear that one. I've heard that one before.
It was fair, but you know, my brothers will tell you something else.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So, and then going on down, I left local government for various reasons, and interestingly enough, when I met Jay back in the 90s, and at that stage, I went to work for a company part-time, really, just to ensure that I'd got some funds coming in, which was an IT marketing company. But during that time, I was training to be a counsellor. So I qualified as a counsellor whilst I was working there, and didn't do a lot with that, really, because I had a meteoric rise in that company, and soon became the client services director. Do you remember, Jay? So I was there. I said, look, I only want to work part-time. But yeah, the managing director had other ideas, and so I kind of just got on with that, and did my counselling practice at evenings and weekends, and kind of practiced when I could on some of the team, didn't I, Jay? Whenever
I think you were, out of all the managers there, you were the, and I remember you because I was one of the team leaders, project coordinators.
Yeah.
And I remember you took us all. We had something happen, and you took us all into the goldfish bowl, the meeting room, and I remember you saying, that you have a consultative way of managing. So you wanted to put get some feedback from us before you made a final decision. And I was always very impressed with that, because growing up in my career, growing up in a corporate environment, it's very much like, this is what we're doing, like it or lump it. Whereas you were completely different, and it was very refreshing. So I've long said that you were one of the best bosses I've ever had. So yeah, yes, and I genuinely mean that.
Yeah, and you know, as I say, during that time, I was qualifying as a counsellor. So having had during that time before then a counsellor that I thought was very unproductive, terribly, where I was concerned. So I became a counsellor after that, and then moved on from there into coaching, because where counselling is very prescriptive, I went to live in Ireland for a while, and came across NLP, and did my NLP coaching, and then went on to do master coaching. But I realised that by coaching, it was allowing others, as you've just demonstrated, Jay, it's about allowing people to find their way and their strengths, you know, and to help them to help them find their own path. Where counselling tends to be very much, well, you know, what you really need to do is this, and this. So I did both, and so master coach and transformational coaching has come later for me, Karen. And as part of my transformational coaching, a big part of that was mindset coaching, and for me was mindset changing, and you know, looking at you know, and I make no secret about the issues that I've had mentally throughout my time, which consist of things like burnout and depression, and looking at the reason why those would happen, when in truth, if we look at what society has told us, I should have been really happy, really, you know, because by society's benchmarks and measurements, I was quite successful, you know, and had all the trappings of success according to what society thought. So I then decided to have a look at what really happens here you know, to make all this happen or not happen. And I remembered there's a Robbie Williams song, and I relate to this, and you know, and I hope, I don't know if any of you have ever been through this, but Robbie Williams, there's a song that he sings that says, there's a line, and I won't quote it correctly, but I'll do my best. It says something like, either one. I don't want to die, but I'm not liking living either. You know, that kind of line was so impactful to me. You know, this business of, I don't want to take my own life. I don't want to die. I you know, I want to be here, but what for, really? It's you know, there's something fundamentally wrong or uneasy for me. And a lot of people were going through this at the time when I was talking to friends, you know. The business of, are we going out? Yeah, let's go out. You go to Studebaker's, as it was there. I don't know if any of you know Studebaker's. You're probably too young. But, you know.
I remember Studebaker's. I've been there.
So going out drinking, and, you know, it's going to work all week, and then we go out drinking, or we might go to Liberties, and, you know, it's supposed to be fun, and it is fun, and we're having a great time. But, you know, by this stage, you see, I bought my first house when I was 19. I got my second house by the time I was 21. You know, I was driving, I don't know if Jay remembers, but I had a brand new Mercedes. You know, I you know, chose and I was quite young, you know. So almost, I think what happened to me was I got to a certain age, and I got the trappings, and so you kind of need to find a purpose.
I relate to you there, definitely.
Yeah, and it and I think that's what set me down the mental health mindset, positive thinking road. So yeah, I'd say that came last, and it's not that it's come last. It's my life.
Yeah,
you know, it's my life. You know, I look at mental health, mental strength, mental agility, positive thinking, the subconscious. You know, I'm that's me, learning that stuff all the time. You know, because I recognise, you know, Karen, one of the things is that if you've ever had a mental health issue, and when I talk about mental health, I'm not talking about chronic mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar or crisis. I'm talking about depression, anxiety, stress, burnout. If you've ever had any of those issues where you actually do hit a wall and you're just sitting there thinking, what the hell? And you've managed to work your way through the other side somehow with help, you know, however you've done it, you really don't want to go back there, but you are aware that it's still there somewhere hovering, you know.
There's I have moments definitely of kind of like flatness, if you like, lack of energy, lack of motivation. I think the difference between, say, 10, 15 years ago, when I was living the life that you lived as well, all the trappings of wealth, is that I learned to recognise those moments, and rather than kind of sit and dwell in them, I won't say I embrace it, but I know that it's going to come.
Absolutely.
But as quickly as it comes, I know it's going to pass. But I think it's about, I suppose for me, it's about understanding myself, understanding my triggers, understanding, you know, what's my mind like at this moment in time, you know, and being able to then change your surroundings, because sometimes you just need to zig instead of zag, and that can completely change your trajectory. Have a different conversation, pick up the phone, go and see somebody you haven't seen for ages. There's so many things that can kind of snatch you away from going over that precipice of the mind, taking you down that path. So but yeah, you know, I think knowing the triggers as well, and and navigating them has really helped me. Really helped me. So I relate definitely to that.
Yeah. And really, a lot of what you've said is the kinds of things that I work through with people that I'm coaching. You know, understanding. The first thing is to understand it. I mean, one of the things you mentioned is that I am chair of the mental health charity. So with the charity, we're working to stamp out the stigma. So with my business, I'm working with they say there's 1 in 4 of us. So there's 5 of us on here. So there you go. They say 1 in 4 of us will suffer or have suffered at some stage with some kind of mental health struggle. And that's different to having a bit of a down day. We all get those. And listen, some stress is good. Not all stress is bad. But you like Nigel says, you have to, what we do is to help you to recognise the difference. You know, if you find that you can't get out of bed, and this is happening for 2 to 3 weeks, you know, 1 day or 2 days, now it's quite fashionable, isn't it, to talk about a duvet day, you know, and I think that's fine. If that's what does it for you, as you said, Nigel, when it triggers, when you know your trigger, if that's me, and Karen, you will know, there are days when I say, I just can't, I have to cancel all appointments. I have to. I know what's happening here. And I have to. And I say to people, this is my day. I've got to take this day off. I know it. And that is when I can feel overwhelmed. Now, that's a trigger for me. It may not be for others, you know, so it's important to know yourself. And so I'm a very big self-care advocate. So my role, I see, if you like, is I talk to the 1 in 4, my charity and its associates. We talk to the 3 in 4. So, you know, the people who would say they don't suffer with any kind of mental health issue, and help them to understand what it is, and that their friend next to them might be suffering but doesn't want to talk. So, you know, people like to ask people, how are you feeling? How are you? Everybody says it, don't they? How are you? And then someone will say they're fine, and you go, fine, and walk off. It's harder when somebody actually says, actually, I'm not feeling too good today. So we talk to those 3 and 4 about how to handle that, you know, and that's what the charity does. We work to stamp out the stigma. We work to lobby for resources, and to help those organisations who actually do work with people with mental health illness. Me, as a transformational life coach, I work with those people, hopefully, before they get to the chronic stage, you know, to kind of navigate their way through what's going on here, and to build their mental strength, really, and, you know, identify it's okay to not be okay. And it's more now, isn't it? We're all okay with that since we've had the pandemic, you know, and everybody's talking about mental health. It's become quite trendy. But the truth is, you know, for years, people were afraid to say that they had a mental health issue, because some of you may remember, you know, lots of people would be locked up in asylums, wouldn't they? Simply locked up, you know.
But I read somewhere recently, in one of the newspapers, there's a young man, well, he's not young anymore, I think he's in his mid-30s, and he was sectioned at 17. He had autism, and he'd have outbursts for certain things. So he became quite distressed, and he was sectioned at 17. 15, 16 years later, he's still locked up, and his family can't get him out of the system. Can't get him out of the system. And you're right, I mean, my dad's got dementia. Now, 30 years ago, chances are he would have been in All Saints, and that would have been it. And the thing about that as well is, if he was younger and had dementia, he'd have been there from the age of 20, and that would have been it. And it's quite huge how it's and this is what I said to you about, do you think it's come far tenfold? Because I still remember those people who had a mental health issue, whether it was severe or not, just being carted off. And in some cases, that would be the last time you'd see them ever again.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously they don't do that now. They're not allowed to do that now. But you still hear those stories. Like I said last week, I read about a woman whose son has gone into, you know, care, and they can't get him out. He's literally, yeah, he's in there. So it's big, man. Still big.
You know, I look at the figures, and when I go into organisations, and I look at the figures. You know, that we know that 300 million people have been affected globally by depression. You know, 6,500 people in the UK alone take their own lives. That's, you know, 800,000 worldwide. That's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and when you talk to people, I don't really understand how these figures are, because I'm told that 1 in 4 people are affected by mental health, yet 1 in 5 must be the same, have considered taking their own life. You know, and you kind of, and so if the work that I can do can take those figures down, you know, somehow, you know, or the work that we can do, because as I said, my charity works with the people generally, you know, societally, so that we can change our attitude towards mental health. Then we will have won. We'll have done something, won't we?
Absolutely.
I think it is getting better.
I think that you I've missed that point actually. But yeah, I think one of the big things which is happening now, which wouldn't have happened even 10 years ago, is that more people will ask for help, or, you know, that's why you have counsellors and NLP, and because people, more people are now saying, you know something, it's acceptable to not feel okay. I'm going to go and seek that help. There's still not enough. You know, there's still the kind of masculine world where but it's men who tend to commit more suicides than anybody else. And what that kind of says to me is that men still haven't been given the tools to be able to communicate how they actually feel. On the face of it, it's, you know, it is very much masculine and, you know, and all that. But how many of these guys, you said it earlier, people say, how are you? I'm fine. You know, I have quite a few clients who I ask that question to. When we go into a discovery call, because I go quite deep, I mean, I've had 1 or 2 of them kind of in tears, because it's the first time someone's actually asked them how they're doing and wants to know everything, not just the kind of, yes, everything's fine, you know. And if you think about your life anyway, and all the 4 of us sat on here now, how often does someone ask you, are you all right, but then go beyond the surface answer of, yes, I'm fine? It doesn't really happen that much.
I think people are afraid to ask me now, Nigel, in case they stop talking.
Well, let me make a cup of tea, and I'll ask you how you. Oh God! Oh Lord! Oh Lord! Oh no! Yeah, I imagine what your conversations are like. But I think men. But
I take your point, and you're right. It is men, and what we've done over the last couple of years is that we've done a lot of work with football clubs. So a lot of work with organisations that are typically male dominated. So football clubs, we've been to gyms. I've done talks in the fire service and the police. Because you're right, still men, you know, we still need to get men to talk. And you know, I spoke to somebody yesterday, and even if you talk to a friend, you know, is it all right? You know, I just need someone to talk to. And sometimes that's all that makes the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the number of guys I speak to who haven't had that conversation, and you know, I'm talking to them and I'm saying, well, does your brother know? Does your best friend know? No.
Yeah.
And why not? Because he will think that I'm a or how do you know?
Well, and you've hit the nail on the head. And I think when we look at some of the young people who are maybe fallen to the wayside and they're involved in things they shouldn't be, you'll probably find that no one's ever actually spoken to them properly on a level where they actually know, well, you know, how do you actually feel? I suppose this is where the gang comes in, because when you're in your gang, you ain't got to talk about feelings. You just talk about, yeah, it's what, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. But yeah, it's getting to young boys, you know, young lads at an early age. And because let's be honest, guys, you know, most schools now, they've still got this thing, you're softy, or you know, you're a sissy, or all these kind of negative connotations about actually having a soul. You know what I mean? Because you're talking about your soul, aren't you? If you're expressing your feelings. But as a man, I think, or boy, whatever, I think it's just so much friction still. It's getting better. You know what I mean? You know, my son talks to me about things that I would never have talked to my dad about. Lord God, what's up?
Yeah, that's great.
Can I, if I could say, if I'm allowed to chip in, it's all well and good, you know, so like, yeah, I think sometimes if a guy is seen in a particular way, they've got a particular image to protect, or they feel they've got to protect that image, it's all the more difficult for them to actually ask for help or accept help. I had a friend 2 years ago. He was going through. Can you hear me? If you're from,
yeah, we can hear you.
We could.
Well, we could.
I think Jay's froze.
Oh gosh, that was an interesting point as well. I know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, I had a friend who was he'd gone through a breakup with his partner, and I messaged him on phone. They were like, well, if you want some, if you need us, we're here. And I was saying that, the other mates were saying that. He was known by all his friends as a very, very positive guy. And he was like, I'm fine, I can deal with this. And then just out of the blue, 21st of March, actually the 4th anniversary of my brother's taking his life, he hung himself, you know.
Yeah.
Just like that.
I've you know, my wife, one of her friends from growing up, same thing. No one even knew, you know, I don't think anyone even asked him if he was all right, but one day just decided enough is enough, and that's it. And you've got to wonder why you know, especially if someone's in a relationship, why there's that difficulty to even say to someone that you sleep with every night and wake up to in the morning, that you can't communicate that feeling. And is it because men are trying to still kind of put on this, look at, you know, I'll put it all on my shoulders, and you know, it's not doing us any favors, I think.
It's not just that. It's not just the. I mean, that is one part of it. But in talking to a lot of men that I've spoken to, a lot of it is because they don't want to burden somebody with it. You know, you know, I talk to a lot of guys who say, "Oh gosh, nobody wants to hear my problems." You know, I've got a wife, 3 kids. You know, and you are right. They just come this masculine. You know, I'm the breadwinner. I'm, you know, oh gosh, imagine if I was to burden my wife and tell her how I'm feeling, and she's already stressed. There's a lot of that, really. And so that's why, you know, we go about saying to people, we're here, just talk to us, you know. There are many listening services around, and more listening services, actively listening, you know, that people can plug into. There's so many charities that are running these things now, that if you can't speak to your partner, and often you can't, and I do get it for that reason, you know, because if you've always worn this mask, you certainly, it's very difficult to take it off, isn't it? And say, hey,
I think though, sometimes, and I know that I can relate to this point, sometimes as the partner, you actually want to be asked. you don't want to have to volunteer the information. It's almost like, I suppose it's that thing of, I don't want to sound like I'm moaning, but I'm peed off with life and I want to do, you know what I mean? I think it comes back to communication, doesn't it? It comes back to actually people speaking to each other properly on a level where they understand each other on an emotional level, as opposed to, yeah, you're my partner, I'm your wife. You know, I've had moments where I've had like bad days, bad weeks, and I've been almost trying to psychically send a message to my wife to ask me how I am, and she hasn't.
And maybe that's it. It's having a way of being able to say,
like a safe word, maybe. I don't
how
know.
you feel.
I want a coffee with 4 sugars today, and oh right, let's talk. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's something that mentioned is a safe word they can use with their partner, which basically means I want to have a serious conversation. I've got to go and find some other earphones because these ones are going to die.
So what you tend to say is that, you know, if somebody is going through a mental health struggle, it won't be just one day. So,
No.
you know, if you live with somebody, you need to recognise a pattern of behaviour that changes. So, you know, I've got a husband who, as soon as it's daylight, he's got to get up. You know, so I would know that something was wrong if he was in bed till 8 o'clock, for instance.
Yeah.
And if that was one day, and I may say to him, "Are you okay?" and he may say, "Yes, I'm fine." But if that was happening regularly, you know, what we say to people is say, "Look, something's not right. We need to talk about it. If you can't talk to me, you know, let's seek help." And it's helping people to have those conversations like you just said, Nigel, because also the person that's listening, it's not easy for them. You know, often they're asking the question thinking, "Oh, please don't tell me that you've got a problem."
Well, it's that thing, and again, I think it's communication, because this hasn't happened to me, but I've heard of people who have tried to speak to their partners. In fact, I've got one friend who was speaking the other week, and whenever he's tried to speak to his partner, she turns it into her being about her, as opposed to kind of saying, "Oh, you have something that you want to talk to me about." She then goes to the defensive of, "Oh, it's me," and you know what I mean. So he doesn't even get that 5 minutes of conversation. It then switches to then her, and then it turns into an argument because she's completely missed the point. Yeah. Which is like,
I had a wife like that.
and you know something, right? I'm not blaming the wife. I'm not blaming the partner. I think they just don't understand about active listening and communication. And you then got to say to yourself, well, where are we learning these skills, or where should we be learning these skills, or why aren't we learning these skills? And I think, you know, it's definitely the way that people are brought up. I know in the Caribbean community, most certainly, and you'll probably agree, Rosie, you know, growing up, there were certain things you weren't saying to your parents. There's certain things that they would never know, not until they're gone.
There's certain things I wouldn't talk to them about now. So
that's what I mean. But if you think we've all carried this as people for how many generations? So to get us all to a point where even 50% of men or people are more open and expressive with what they're going through in that moment in time, you're probably talking about a generation, 2 generations. You're probably talking about Star Trek type, you know. And I watch Star Trek and they all get on with each other perfectly fine. It's like, oh, that's a utopia.
And I don't think it's just in the adults either, it's in the children.
Oh, it's absolutely in the children.
Do you know what I mean? Children that are too afraid to speak to their parents come out with how they really feel.
Yeah.
School isn't easy for a lot of people, Karen. I mean, that's an interesting question.
I mean, that was where my mental health started.
Yeah. And if you think about it, you know, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day when I was talking about trauma and you know, and getting people to recognise trauma, because we talk about PTSD and we immediately think about military, but PTSD can happen at any stage in your life. And one of the things I remember was, as I said, yes, I passed my 11 plus and I went to grammar school. Whoopie-doo, fab. But before that, I was at primary school like everybody, and I loved it. Running around playing with a group of friends that I had year from year. You know, we'd walk home together, we'd be in and out of each other's houses. And then I passed my 11 plus, my friends didn't, you know. So on the one hand, you know, it was bittersweet for me because it was great, and the parents and their friends and everybody thought I was, you know, the bee's knees. But I left my friends behind who actually didn't support my family and my friends and their friends with their elation. They decided that I'd suddenly become a snob. You know, we're only 11.
Yeah.
And so that relationship literally ended. And I went to a school where I was the littlest and the youngest. Of course, you know, you leave school, you're the oldest and the biggest. And then I go to a school where I didn't know anybody. And that for me was trauma.
Of course.
And I'm sure we've all gone through the same. The numbers of people that I speak to and they go, oh my God, yeah. It was horrendous going from primary school to secondary school. It wasn't fun at all, was it?
What do they do to address that now in schools? As the education authorities are recognised, you know, this transition from primary school. I mean, my niece, she had a leaving assembly, finished school last Friday. She had a leaving assembly on a Tuesday, and she was in tears and she was sad and everything else. But, you know, I said to her, you know, great things now, you can go on and you can start developing and thinking about your career and that. But she was still sad. It doesn't seem to me like schools have kind of thought of that effect.
No.
They haven't addressed it. They still haven't addressed it. So, you know, you go from a school where you've got your one teacher in your
You're
one
protected, aren't you? You're kind
classroom.
of protected.
This is your little home, and you absolutely, you know, if it's a great teacher, you're having a fabulous time. Then you go to this place that, you know, you do a lesson and then you move to, you know, along corridors, hurried along. It's just, it's. I don't think they addressed it.
One event in my first week of senior school completely changed something in my life. And I'll tell you when it was. It was my first geography lesson. Our teacher was called Mr. Peterson Jones. And we all came in, shuffled in, sat down. And he went, right, my name's Mr. Peterson Jones. We sit on the board. He says, you will all write in block capitals or you will have a detention. And that was it. From that moment onwards, I've always wrote in block capitals, and I can't even write in small letters anymore. He changed the whole trajectory. All right. And the thing is, he meant it. And obviously, being in the first year and your first week, whatever them teachers are going to say to you goes. You're like, and that was it. Block capitals. I can't even write lowercase anymore. All capitals, man.
That's funny. The things that we carry through from our childhood, yeah. So,
crazy, man.
I mean, you're right, Karen. The mental health issues that young people go through, and I know I've got colleagues who work with young people. You do as well, don't you, Karen?
Yeah.
That's not my forte, even though, you know, I spent years as a careers advisor. But I do know that that's valuable work, valuable.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, if you can get to young people and talk to young people before they get to the stage like your friend Jay and your brother, you know, if somebody can get to that and get them to be happy with themselves, which is very difficult.
Oh, it is. I think I used to be one of these kind of guys. Oh, these youngsters today, they don't know we're alive, blah blah blah. But then I actually sat and thought about 3 years ago. My friend said to me, he says, it's all very well you going youngsters, this, youngsters, that, but you ain't no teenager in the year 2017. So what do you know what it's like? And I was like, you know something, he's got a point there. With the advances of technology, the phones, you know, if you think about it, the value of what kids want has gone up by tenfold. Because back in the day, it was, oh, can I get a ZX Sinclair computer? 50 quid. Now they want a £500 phone. You know, and you know, you can't go and say, oh, I'll get you a Samsung C10. It's got to be the latest phone, because the peer pressure side of things now. I mean, I remember this guy taking the mickey out of me through all of my first year because I didn't wear Farrah trousers. Now, I knew Farrah trousers were like 45, 50 quid. My mum weren't paying £50 on a pair of trousers. In fact, I actually had to hold him up by his neck one time because he just, for about 6 months, he was in my ear. And I thought, you know something, I've had enough of this. I did end up getting a pair of Farrahs, but they were hand-me-downs. But if you think about it, £50 pair of trousers versus a £500 phone. And the problem for the parents is they go and buy these expensive things. The kid, bless them, don't realise the value of it, and then they book it. So the parents like, the kid's like, nah, I need another one. And then the kid will get another one because they've got to keep up with the Joneses, keep up with the peer. It's so hard. You know, they can't escape. They've got all the internet. You know, back in the day, you had a bully, you left him at the school gates. Now he follows you home. He's sending you notifications. He's sending you a WhatsApp. He's sending you an email. He's telling everybody else about you, even though your beef was between him and you. So I think in a lot of ways, it's harder now for kids. Yeah. But they've got so much more help around and available to them, but it's actually harder. It's a dichotomy, isn't it? It's like, oh.
But you know, the truth is, what you've just said is true in terms of we carry a lot of those through to adulthood.
Yeah.
That bigger, better, best doesn't necessarily leave us, you know, and this is where I was talking about my first brush with mental health struggle was, you know, yes, I had the brand new car. Yes, I had the top job. Yes, I was earning a lot of money. You know, I just bought a second house. I got the gorgeous daughter who was brilliant and is still brilliant. And then I was like, what now? You know, what now? And the truth is, what I hadn't stopped to look at were my own personal values. And you know, this is what society says, you know, go to school, go to college, go to university, get a job. Well, I did all of that and still, you know, somebody used a word the other day, emptiness. And I think that's what I try to do is try to get people to be happy with themselves. I start with the premise that everybody wants to be happy. And most people want to be successful. Whatever successful it means to you, success could mean sleeping in your car, you know, buying yourself a motorhome and just, you know.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
So, you know, that's where I work, that everybody wants to be happy and everybody deserves to be happy.
I think one of the things that happens, and I think I definitely recognise that, because when I was at Yale, I was earning noodles of money. I was doing 80-hour weeks. Anything I wanted, I could pretty much have. But you're absolutely right. That emptiness of what's it all about? You know, I can buy what I want. I can go where I want. I can drink as much as I want. But what's it all about? And I think it's about being able to nurture your soul, I think, and to do something which, you know, not only makes a difference to you because you're doing it, but also makes a difference to others as well. And that's the place where I've got to, where I feel at my best. I feel like Superman now, because I'm, as Jen Stiles would say, working my flow of genius, which is to help others, to pass on knowledge, to share what I know. And yeah, you know, there is a business attached to it. And, you know, yes, I have to get paid here, there and everywhere, but it doesn't mean I can't still help people for free and still talk and give advice. And I think that's, for me, I mean, I'm in the best place I've been in my life, I believe. Even though I'm not earning the money I was when I was at Yale, right now, I mean, I'm on top of the world. Top of the world.
So, how do you avoid burnout? Because obviously you've been there.
Me, I think we've just talked about that. Really, it's as Nigel said, and I think Jay articulated. It's about recognizing those triggers. You know, it's about. I mean, burnout for me is, you know, when you're stressed, you can't sleep, and there's a million things going on in your mind, and you know. I remember driving to home from work one day, and I genuinely I think I said this to you before, Karen. I've no idea how I got from A to B. I don't know. I don't remember the journey.
But what I meant by that is, would you be able to recognise it in other people?
In other people?
Yeah. You know, how do you know burnout in other people?
Yeah, because
what would you be seeing in other people?
It's not so much seeing in other people, because, you know, some people operate at a high level. Their energies are high all the time. So you recognise it, Karen, if there's a change in their pattern of behaviour. And that's how you recognise it, because some people are more fatigued. So, you know, but some people naturally go to sleep. My brother goes for a nap every afternoon.
Hey, we like you, brother, you know.
He's always done it. You know, we laugh about it. But that's it.
That's me recharging his batteries, man.
And that's his thing. But if you don't normally do that, and you know, you're having 8-9 hours sleep a night, and you're still waking up and you're fatigued, then that is a sign of something else, right?
Yeah.
If you're a sort of person that's always high, you know, and you're low, and somebody recognises that, somebody needs to recognise that. You know, there are all sorts of things. If you're, tell you what there is at the minute where I'm recognising burnout, Karen. I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people, particularly of a certain age, we are very good at telling everybody that we're so busy. When I speak to somebody, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. So busy. Honestly, the phone has never stopped ringing. I've got this email to do, that email to do, that call to do. I'm on this Zoom call, I'm on that Zoom call. There's a thing now they're calling Zoom fatigue, right?
Oh, it's real. It exists.
And it exists. and that is burnout. Because this constantly, and you know, you people, us, we're all in each other's homes. That's where we are. And if you're doing that all day, every day, it's exhausting. And when you start to feel overwhelmed, certain characteristics change, don't they? So you may start eating a lot more, you may start drinking a lot more, you may sleep a lot more, you may talk a lot faster, a lot louder, you may get more angry, you may, you know, snap at every little thing. That's how you recognise that burnout's on its way. It's when you really feel overwhelmed, when you can't focus, when you can't concentrate. All of these things are indications of burnout. They're also indications of other things, you know. So you would have to look at your own life and work out, is this burnout?
And how can you help with the menopause? Do you do workshops on this?
It's interesting when you talk about menopause, you know, because I talk about midlife.
Is this time for us to go, Jay?
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
Because I talk about midlife. And the truth about menopause is that a lot of people, we apart from the obvious, a lot of women were not told about brain fog and losing focus. Yes, everybody knows about hot flashes or whatever they're called. Not everybody has those. Menopause itself is not a mental health condition, but there are the results of hormone depletion, if you like, that does cause anxiety, or can cause anxiety, can cause stress, can cause depression. And so, you know, I think it was it Ulrika Johnson or Carol Vorderman? I remember listening to them and women on TV, celebrities, until they started saying, hey, I've gone through menopause, and my God, I thought I was losing my mind. Then, you know, I remember sitting in a meeting and I couldn't remember one word. And it was portfolio. And I remember wanting to cry because I knew it was there. And I remembered somebody sniggering. And I actually thought then, you know, like your father, Nigel, probably at that stage, oh my God.
And
it was scary.
The thing about even menopause, if you think about it, 50 years ago, what would a doctor have said about the woman? Oh, she's going through this. Stick her in a room for a couple of weeks, and she'll be all right.
Changed, didn't it? But you know, it's hormone depletion, and the reason I say stick around when we're talking is because we like to talk about women going through menopause.
Men go through it.
But we have to accept that menopause is hormonal changes. It's a hormonal imbalance.
Absolutely.
Men go through their midlife hormonal imbalance as well.
Absolutely.
Testosterone levels go down.
Absolutely.
All kinds of things happen, you know, chemical reactions, you know, then suddenly your insulin levels go all haywire, you know. These are the things that I talk about in workshops, which I talk about life after midlife changes, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And those midlife changes can include things like caring for older parents, because that's where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, we work for so many years, 40 odd years, and then we think, oh yeah, I'm going to retire and have a fabulous life. And then you may end up with, sorry, Karen, I know as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, a relative, a parent, having to live with you. Or becoming physically disabled in such a way that their ability is limited, is what I meant. In such a way that your life changes.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? All of this, you know, we have to consider. All of these things do things to one's mental health.
Of course. Absolutely.
So the workshops that I do, Karen, look at midlife, not just menopause, because there's so much that happens as we get to our late 40s, 50s and 60s. So yeah, I do run workshops on that.
And what area do you prefer to work in? Because obviously
geographically,
we all prefer to work in one specific area. What's closest to your heart?
You know, in my other role, I talk about niching and things like that. I like working in the charity mental health, but I love working in the positive in the mindset transformational coaching. I love that. I love when I'm able to help somebody to find out how brilliant they are, how awesome they are, the abilities that they have, the values that they are sharing that are not really their values, you know. I remember reading something once that says everybody's climbing the ladder to success, but be careful it's not against the wrong wall, right? So, and it, you know, when you talk to somebody and you're able to show them who they are, and they actually like who they are, as opposed to who they think they should be, or how others see them, that's the area I like working in. I remember that poem, and I, you know, when I was younger, oh, the gift that God will give us to see ourselves as others see us. And I remember thinking that years ago, oh, that's fabulous. I really want to see what other people, but really no. What I want people to do is to go inward. And I think that's what Nigel was talking about, you know, that there's a spirit and to us, you know, there's a physicality, mental, and our spirituality, emotional side to us. All of that needs nurturing to bring out the best in us.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the area I enjoy working in.
And in your opinion, is the mental health as important as physical health, although there's more emphasis put on physical health, isn't there? There's more talk about physical health.
I talk about normalising mental health. So So what I want is to see, or I mean, in answer to your question, they're of equal importance. However, you can't do anything physically without your mind. Really, you know, they can't work independently of each other. Right. So you're right. So much importance is put on you know, the physical side of things. It's like having a car, isn't it? And I've watched people do this, you know, focus on. I remember this guy I knew had this old BMW, and he was so determined that, you know, getting the bodywork all fabulous and brilliant, and he had it resprayed and lowered and all this, and he got his, and I remembered my dad saying, and the engine under that bonnet isn't worth a thing.
That sounds like my dad.
And you know, I'm not joking with you. He got it in his garage and he'd been doing it up, and it must have taken the best part of 10 months, 11 months to get this car going. And this is no word of a lie. He got that car, drove that car for what, 6-8 weeks, and the engine blew up.
Yeah, of course it did. Of course it did.
Blew up because he hadn't spent the time working on the brains.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's the same as different, I suppose, analogy. It's like the person who buys all the designer clothes, but then goes and pays rent in a council flat, or, you know, they're spending £80 on a pair of jeans, £100 on a coat, but then they're having to give the other half of their wages to rent, as opposed to building something for themselves. So, but yeah, my dad used to do that all the time. Bring on a different car.
And I've actually seen that, and I remembered that, and I just think, wow, isn't that so true? You know, and even, you know, we're happy to say, you know, how you feel? Oh, I've got a bit of cold. I'm susceptible to colds. Oh gosh, I need to get. And somebody will always say to you, do you know what you want to take is what's it called, night nurse or whatever, Lemsip. Go and take some Lemsip. You know, I've got a headache. You tried ibuprofen or whatever. What I would love to see is somebody say, actually, I'm suffering from depression at the minute, or I'm stressed out. My anxiety levels are up here. And for your friend to be able to say what you want to do is, or be able to just have a conversation with you, and they're equally as important.
You, I mean, the thing is, when that does happen, I mean, I've referred several people to counsellors and therapists. I've got a knack of digging deep when I speak to people. I don't know where it comes from. You know, and I think that those are the kind of campaigns which should go out, which what you've just said there eloquently sums up what needs to happen. You know, and actually the video, even if you could take this little section and just have you saying, I would love people, instead of saying, how are you? And they say, oh, I've got a bit of depression. Oh, I'll see you later then. To actually say, well, look at these different services that you can go to. You can go here, you can go there. I know someone who does counselling. But we've all got to be educated. We've all got to be given the knowledge. We've all got to know where to go. If you look at a different thing, but look at the homeless. Some of those people are homeless because they choose to be, because of the addiction that they're in. It outweighs them kind of, you know, moving things around. But some of them are there because they had no one to talk to. And some of those people who are there don't know themselves where the other services are to support them. And that's on that level. So if you think of it on a level of...
I'm in a meeting.
If you think of it on a level of, you know, 20, 30 million adults, you know, if you was to stand in Birmingham today with a clipboard and say, right, if one of your friends had a mental health issue, where would you send them? I'd say probably, 10% of people could probably say, oh, they could go here or go there. The other 90 would be like, hospital, phone the NHS, call 111. And that's where I think we're missing a bit of a trick, because everything's not joined up. Everything's kind of fragmented. They do what they do. They do what they do. They get separate funding from them. It's only when you enter the services that they can then signpost you, but it's actually being able to get into the services to be signposted. And that's a difficulty for a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's what our charity's done. You know, our first thing was to get a directory of services set up, and that's what we've worked on. But that's just for my local area.
Yes.
Right. And that's the sad thing. Until you're actually in the service, you don't know what services are available.
You don't.
And by the time you get to the service, you know,
Too late.
I'm being quite a critical situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you're right. Part of what I would love to see us do is work on that, so that people will say, you know, oh gosh, yeah, my anxiety levels are high, and someone will say, well, have you heard of so and so? Have you spoken to so and so? Why don't you go to, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once we get to the level where, you know, if someone says to you today, oh, I'm looking for a camera, you'll send it to Amazon or eBay or whatever. We need to be at the stage where someone says, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling depressed. Oh, you need to contact. Once we're at that state, then you'll see a huge switch, a huge change, because it then becomes a second nature. It becomes something which is embedded within our minds. And that's what I say about the generation. You're probably talking 2 generations before we're at that state. Although saying that, Amazon's come from nowhere in the last 20 years. It can be done, can't it? It can be achieved. That message can be given to a wide range of people, but the support's got to come, obviously, from government and funding and this and that. So I suppose that's the difficulty there.
And the final question is, if you lived your life over again, would you change anything?
Nothing.
I love that. I'm the same.
Honestly, I can't even know.
I'm the same.
Don't get me wrong. When I say that, you know, I could sit here and reel off some unpleasant, you know, a couple of relationships that probably should never have happened. But no, I wouldn't change anything. No. They've made me who I am today. So.
You know something, and that's, I think that you hit the nail on the head there. If you're happy with who you are, then it's like, well, what part of you would you change? You know, if you're happy with who you are, how could you be better? How can you be better than being happy? It's like, well, how can you be better than being happy?
Yeah. So no, the answer is no.
So it's all part of your journey that made you you.
Yeah. I wouldn't. What I do, Karen, is I don't spend a lot of time, because we talked about triggers in the past, right? So it would mean I'd have to sit and think through stuff in the past in order to work that, you know, to give you a really comprehensive answer to that question. So rather than me dragging myself through my past, good and bad, and sometimes ugly, if I look at where I am today and how happy I am with my life today, listen,
it's in the past, forgotten about.
I'm here. I'm loved, and I've got some lovely people around me, including you guys. It's just it's fabulous, you know. So no, I wouldn't change a thing.
I wouldn't change a thing.
I met Jay back in the 90s, and he's still saying that I was one of the best managers he's ever had. So, or worked with, rather. So, you know, that's really impressive to know.
Does anybody
Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
Rosie, any questions?
I think, I mean, I did have one question, actually. Rosie Gardner, hate me. You mentioned that it was horrendous doing your A-levels at sixth form. What made it horrendous doing your A-levels at sixth form?
In the school, at school, the first year, because you're sixth form, so you kind of, you know, everything is free, isn't it? You know, you wear your own clothes, you do your own thing, and it's not an easy question, and it's not an easy answer, actually.
Okay.
And it will be something that we probably would discuss another time. But at that time, I was having a bit of an identity crisis.
Right.
Which happened because of sixth form, really. You know,
right.
all throughout years, we were all the same, and everything was the same. But of course, I'm in sixth form now, and you know, I'm wearing certain clothes, and I came from a Pentecostal background, so there's only certain things that I can wear. I'm not allowed to wear jewellery at home anyway. you know, and the girls were different in that they could
Yeah.
wear makeup and
Yeah.
could see boys and all this sort of thing, and it was just, you know, and there were a couple of teachers that didn't help me.
Right. Yeah.
There was one, Miss Thorpe, who was the most amazing woman, but
yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a story over lunch and a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. That is.
I'll tell you though, I actually went to college because I knew that there were a group, and this is the truth, a group of black people that I knew that were at college, and that's why
That's why you went. Yeah,
so
I think. Yeah, but I mean, back in the day, there was that. Tribalism is the wrong word, but we definitely sought the almost protection of people who kind of looked the same, because of the very fact that back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s, it was quite tough out there. So you looked for your people as that kind of comfort blanket of, I'll be all right there, because if anything goes off, there's a few of us who can make noise. So I hear you completely.
Can I just say to you, Rosie? I mean, okay, you were my boss back in the 1997 at a telemarketing company. That's all I knew you as, and I have been very touched by what you said today. A lot of what you said has resonated with me, particularly with where I've been in my journey. And I just want to thank you. I really want to thank you. There's a lot of things, and I'm probably going to want to have a one-to-one conversation with you if that's all right at some point.
Please do. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you. We've got lots to catch up on.
Absolutely, but there's a lot of things that have touched me. Like you're talking about mental health, I've experienced a lot in terms of mental health, both in others and in myself. I've lost 3 people dear to me to suicide. I've been there myself. Came very close at the beginning of this year to actually following through with it. So, I mean, a lot of what you said really, really resonated with me, and I just want to thank you. I really want to thank you so much, because you've a lot of what you've said has resonated and has touched me, and it's inspired me. So thank you.
And what I want to say is, Jay, thank you for finding the bravery to share how you feel with us, because this is what I'm saying. You don't, if we had a meeting of 10, 15 of us and there was 8 or 9 men on there, would any of us have spoken? But Jay, thanks for that, because that bravery, the fact that you're prepared to share how you felt in the past and how just speaking today has helped you. That's what we need more of. What we need more of, mate. And it could be that you become the spokesperson for Rosie's work and be a voice for her.
My head's already thinking.
Well, you saying that, I mean, my breakthrough through weekend with Karen, and I've actually got a call set out for 2022, when I've got a few things in place. But I've had this calling there's something pulling me for some time to help men with confidence issues, because it's something that I've had to battle against, shall we say. It's been a personal battle for me. I was picked on at school. I was the runt of the litter. And people are, Jay's a loner. He likes his own company. I didn't like my own company. I wasn't a loner. I just felt scared to associate with to mix, and I didn't think people liked me. And I thought I was told that I was odd and I was peculiar and I was a weirdo. I changed my name from Jason Lindsay to Jalix Lindsay, as it was an act of courage for me. I battled with it, and it was a case of embracing my individuality.
Yeah.
There are 2 other
Yeah.
Jason Lindsays in the world that I know of, one of which I believe spells their surname like mine. And I wanted to take hold of my individuality. And I wrote a poem a while back, which I've lost, but the title of it was "Quirky is the New Cool."
Yeah.
And it's
I
people.
think I've read that. I'm sure you sent that to me.
Well, no, I haven't. No, I've said the saying a few times, but it's people like will.i.am, Lady Gaga, and even Miranda Hart. Those 3 people in particular have inspired me because they are all really quirky in their own way. And even Boy George, you know, they are so quirky and so outwardly quirky, and they embrace it. And I remember watching Miranda Hart's, and if you saw the comedy Miranda, but she did a 10-year anniversary show, and she was talking about how doing the show was her way of addressing her awkwardness, you know, and empowering other women.
Yeah.
What she doesn't realize that she's also empowered men.
Yeah.
Because I think it's, yes, we live in a male-dominated world, and it's difficult for women to assert themselves. But I think for some men, they seem to think that they have to assert themselves, but they're scared to. And they feel there's something wrong with them, you know. And I was a crier at school, and I was told I was a sissy, I was gay, I was a puff, and there's nothing wrong with being gay, but for a heterosexual guy to be told you're gay, you're a puff, etc., it kind of like, it messes with your head. And, you know, so, I don't want to dominate the conversation too much, but basically, Rosie, what you said was spot on.
And do you know, I did some work some years ago in Winson Green prison, and it was with men that had committed acts of violence, many of them domestic. And do you know how many of them had that story that you've just said? At school, they were sometimes bullied, or even at home. They were told that they were sissies, that they were women, that they were, etc. So many of them individually, you know, that followed through. Out of about 20 guys, I'd say about 11, 12 of them.
And the biggest, and this is where I say it's going to take 2 generations, because let's be completely honest, there's only 2 places that children learn behaviour. In fact, there's 3. One of them's at home. The other one's the media, what's put in front of them. And the other one's school. Now, if you've got a school where the boys are eloquent, they speak about how they feel, they recognise that hurtful language can impact, you've got a complete set of young men coming into the world who are completely different to what's been gone before them. But it has to start from day one. It's like I've seen the video on Facebook of these 2 babies running towards each other. One's white, one's black. And the way they greet each other, they're like toddlers, they're like, like 2 old men who just met up from after 50 years. And it says, you know, no one's born racist. Well, no one is born as a bully. No one is born to say hurtful things. No one is born to say, oh, look at him, he's different. This is stuff which, unfortunately, society has allowed to just kind of be got. You know, I'm a big advocate. I still think TV, I think in some instances, we should have state-controlled television. You know, because you look at some other countries around the world where they do say, you know something, that ain't going on our TVs. Their children seem to be not as involved in some of the madness that, I mean, I don't know the whole world story, but I'm just thinking what goes into that mind, whether it's positive or negative, goes into that mind. And we allow young minds to be given negative influences far too early in their lives, far too early. You know, before they can even make conscious, proper decisions themselves, they're being told by some flashy person on TV that, oh, you've got to look like this, or you've got to wear like that, or that person's one of these, or that person's one of that. Well, yeah, Jay, I completely hear that story. Obviously, what I had is different because it was all about colour, but I had a way of getting different to yourself, stamping that out. I wasn't gonna have it at all. Doesn't matter how old you were, I wasn't gonna have it, and people knew about it in no uncertain terms. And I did successfully navigate school without any other racism after my first year, because I made sure people knew that if they're going to call me names, they had to be able to back up them names.
Isn't it sad though, Nigel, that you just use that word, navigate school, that terminology? I mean, and that is what school is like for some.
Oh, I love school. I'm the same as you. I wouldn't change a thing. The only thing I'd change is I'd probably have started playing football earlier, because it got me out of going to church every week. And I love football, but I loved it all. I even embraced the bad experiences I went through, because that allowed me to understand, understand people, understand situations. I've never had a fight since I've left school. I've never really had any badness when I've gone out, because from an early age, I've always watched people and, how they saying things, what's their body language like. And I think it really helped me as a person to go to a school which was 98% white, as well as be able to go over and say, yo, Mum, what have you doing that? And put on that little... The one thing that learnt me, actually, was... have you ever seen Smile Orange, Rosie?
I don't know. It rings bells. The name...
Ringo Smith was his name. And so, okay, well, it's about two busboys in a hotel in Jamaica, and they're doing what busboys do. But there's one thing that Ringo Smith said is, as a man of colour, you've got to be able to play a part. And I took that on board. And it really, really helped me, because I could switch from Queen's English. And then when I met up with my friends, it was like, Mum, why? And it's so funny, because
part of the identity struggles that I talk about.
But it's funny, when I turn up to appointments. So when I used to sell school furniture. So I turn up to some schools to go and see a school bursar. And they look at me and go, was it you I spoke to on the phone? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, okay. I used to love when that happened.
I would say, I mean, I agree with Nigel. Jay, thanks for sharing your.
Thanks, Jay.
That's your truth, and I would absolutely love to speak to you on a one-to-one, because there's a couple of things you said, and I'm not going to go into it, but I'll just say one thing. You said I was the runt, and that made me scowl at you. So when I'm doing that, I'm thinking, what's going on there?
Again, that would have, from my opinion, that would have filtered down from the way the family dealt with you. And this is what I'm saying about the environment we're in.
But you said I was the runt.
I felt like the runt of the family.
Yeah.
But the strange thing is, my younger brother, about 2 years before. It's about a couple of years, probably about 2 years before he successfully took his life, because he tried a few times, and he had the habit of crying in his beer. When he got drunk, he would be all woe is me and very morose, etc. Either that, he would be the other way and he'd get all lovey-dovey, or he would lose his temper, and he had a violent temper, and he was a very strong man as well. It took 3 policemen to pull him off my dad. Off our dad. He said, because when we were kids, when he was considered to be dyslexic, he had problems reading, and he used to write letter F back to front, and certain letters back to front, and spell things wrong. And my older brother and I, we used to call him Thick, sibling rivalry, and we thought it was funny, that he couldn't read, and
But then, Jay, who did you see who laughed at him to make you think it was funny? That's what I'm saying. You didn't decide one day, that's funny, but you can't read.
No, he was. I think possibly some of the teachers one of the teachers may have called him Thick.
Yeah. So there it is.
Yeah, and then. But I remember
him. It would have come from a teacher or one of your parents.
Well, whoever it came from, I remember him. In his mind, it was just myself and my older brother who had had said that to him. And I remember him saying to me over the phone, he'd clearly been drinking. He was in one of those states of mind. And he had something he had to get off his chest. And he said to me, he said, "You and James have ruined my life." Pardon me a minute. Just
Okay.
monkeys on the ceiling, Karen. He said, "You and James have ruined my life," and that touched me. And I could only apologise to him and say, "Well, you know, we were kids back then. We were ignorant. We knew no better. But you have never been thick. In fact, you are one of the most intelligent people I've met," because he was very intelligent, highly intellectual, even though he had problems reading, you know. But it was too late. It was too little too late because and you know, so I think what happens to us in our childhood sticks with us.
Yeah.
And unless you can get some serious professional guidance and help with like someone like Rosie or Karen, you know, or someone who's actually got the tools to remove those knives that have been stuck in your back and you're holding them there, you know, and give you the courage to pull those out. They carry with you through life, you know.
I think listening to you as well, Jay, I think what you've got to remember, and Rosie will know this as well, where you have children who unfortunately their parents haven't, you know, they've abused them, whatever, and then they grow up a certain way, they hold on to something and it all stems from that. I think, you know, if I was to say, oh, what caused him to do that? If you think about it, he was a middle brother. He had the eldest one and you. Again, this isn't your fault or anything, but I suppose in his mind, if I can't get support from my family, where can I get that support from? Yeah. So I think that's why he held it against you. That's why he didn't remember the teacher calling him it or anybody else or one of the older kids at school, because I suppose in his mind, his support should have come from his blood, from his people who he grew up with.
Well, he was a younger brother. I was a middle one, and then we had an older brother.
Oh, so
yeah. But I remember.
That's my other half. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, right.
I remember him coming home from school one day in tears.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't get on with French. You know, when you go to secondary school after being at primary school, and also they throw this foreign language at you.
You mean English?
Oh yeah, no French. Well, English can be a foreign language, yeah. But
I meant English.
I took to French like a duck to water,
but
he couldn't get on with the language.
Yeah.
And the French this one particular French teacher, she said to him, she said, "John, never try to learn a language because basically you're crap at languages."
Yeah, and that's the thing.
What a thing to say to an 11-year-old boy. But he came. But the strange thing is, and this showed something in him, some strength. When he left school, because he always had a fascination with the Far East, and with Asia, including, and he was mad about Russia, mad about China. And you know, that part of the world. And when he left school, he taught himself to speak, read, and write Russian.
Wow!
And then he went on to he wanted to get qualification in the language, so he went to the Brass House Language Centre in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And he took his exam, and he got 96% in his exam.
Wow!
And we often thought about going up to Miss Sims, the French teacher, back at the school, and saying, "You know, you saw us crap at languages." In your face.
And that's the thing. And again, we go back to what we're told holds us back. Teachers can affect. I remember a history teacher saying to me, in fact, I had 2 incidents. I had one teacher the year ahead who said to me, "Nigel Campbell, if you do a Ponzi subject like PE or maths, music for your GCSEs, I'll have your guts for garters." So basically, what he was saying is I couldn't take anything that I wanted to take, even though I liked it. And then I had another teacher who said to me in a history lesson, when we were doing American history, "Oh, Nigel, your forefathers would have been slaves. Now, those two things have stayed with me forever because it's that thing of, well, I wasn't able to respond the way I should have responded back then, which wasn't negative. I mean, I just put that teacher in her place, but in terms of that year ahead, trying to direct my journey for me, I'd love to have gone back and says, yeah. But your brother, man, he's a Russian. Wow.
He went on to learn Mandarin Chinese.
What?
And Cantonese.
Can I interrupt a minute? Because Rosie messaged me and said she's going to have to go. I was trying to mute her.
I've got to go, actually. I can't believe. I tell you what, this has been one of the best bloody meetings I've been on.
Oh, fabulous! It has been. It really has been.
I'll tell you what, Karen, you've travelled.
Well done,
I'll tell you
Karen.
what, you've set some standards now, love.
Excellent.
Well
done, Karen.
A fantastic thank you to Rosie for coming on today.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you
also
all.
to the audience.
Oh, brilliant. And thank you so much for your participation, Nigel and Jay and that lady, I can't remember her name.
Silvana, she had to go.
Lovely.
We've been chatting for ages, Karen. We've missed our meeting today. I'll have to catch up with you later on.
But it was such a fabulous meeting, and I've been inspired by you all. So thank you, and Jay.